We are live in Las Vegas. Aces Lynx, a preview ahead of the matchup between A'ja Wilson and Napheesa Collier. Angel Reese apologizes for her comments in that explosive Chicago Tribune piece, and also the state of Connecticut may be getting involved in the WNBA business. We got a lot to get to, and I got some time to kill. Let's get to it. And welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. We're in T-Mobile Arena. Not usually where we are if you are going to Aces games, but these next few matchups, two against the Chicago Sky and then this one against the Minnesota Lynx, were viewed as so important by the Aces organization that they decided to bring out the big guns, bring it to the big arena. You can seat 20,000 in this bad boy. And as an aside, it's kind of crazy. The last time I was in here, it was 2020 and COVID was happening. The final game, I think it was one of maybe the last 2 or 3 sporting events played in the United States before the world shut down, was the 8:30 late game, Colorado versus Washington State, Pac-12 men's basketball tournament, happened in this building, and I was here, and the next morning, the entire world shut down. So kind of crazy to be back in this venue and covering a WNBA matchup. For those of you that know us and the work that we do, if you follow us and subscribe to our Substack, which is our daily newsletter, and our paid tier, which gets you a additional daily newsletter. You get 2 for the price of 1, I guess you could say. I have what's called the Watch Guide. I put it out on Fridays. You're seeing it on our YouTube channel. We're starting to integrate it over here a little more. And basically what it is it's a tool for any fan, whether they've been in the game for a long time or are just getting into the game via cable or page or anything else, about what game.
Good morning, T-Mobile Arena.
Forgive me, this is going to happen.
Test on Chet's mic. 1, 2, 3,
back
4.
here. This is kind of like the basic work anytime you're in a facility like this. We call it hurry up and wait in television. So everyone's doing all of their pregame work. As you can see, they're setting up the mics that you're going to hear on the broadcast when someone bricks the shit out of a 3. That's the guy that's putting the microphone in, so you can hear somebody go bang when it hits the backboard. But anyway, the Watch Guide is basically built for you to be able to curate your watching experience. You know, what games you should tune into, what games you don't need to tune into in the WNBA all the way through the weekend. It is very rare that I put 10 out of 10s on that schedule. Usually the watch score is like a 9 or a 9.5 out of 10 for the best games you can get. But for 10s, I want it to mean something. Game of the year is not a term that should be used so flippantly in basketball. And to me, this is one of those matchups that is a game of the year 10 out of 10. Because you can't just have the teams be good, right? That doesn't make a matchup compelling enough. What you need is drama, stakes, players, narrative.
Test on check. 1, 2, 3, 4.
You need all of the things that create the drama and entertainment that sports provides. This game is the 110 out of 10 on my schedule for the WNBA this year. You do not want to miss it. You can't miss it, because this game, more or less, it is going to decide the MVP race. It doesn't have an impact on the standings per se, but Vegas needs to keep winning if they want to stay in that second seed and lock that up and get it away from Phoenix or Atlanta or even New York.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Trying to push into that realm. Minnesota's going to want this because they came into this building and beat the brakes off of Vegas the last time they played. Granted, it was in Michelob, but it was down here in Vegas. It was a 111-58 win for Minnesota, and that actually prompted the 12-game win streak that we now see for the Las Vegas Aces. This game, to me, and I know people will find it reductive given that this is a whole season, but MVP voting is no different in the W than it is any other sports league. Media members, people like myself, even though I do not have a vote, we are fickle. We can be self-aware about who we are and what we do. And there's a lot of media members that have votes for awards and such that can see singular performances like this and make a decision about whether or not this is the type of thing that sways them one way or the other. And everything that I have heard on the floor today, both teams went through pregame shoot-around earlier this morning, and they are going to have pregame media availabilities around 5 o'clock here. It's about 1:45 when I'm recording this Pacific time in Vegas. Everybody wants this. I mean, it's very clear. There's no love lost between these teams. I don't know if you could call it a full-on rivalry, but and there's not beef. I want to be very clear about that. Like, this is not a rivalry that is rooted in beef. This is a rivalry that is rooted in competition. This is MVP versus MVP. And I talked to Courtney Williams this morning. I know that they are not going to say it, but as much as Courtney said to us in the media availability, we control the things we can control. We're not going to make this about, Fee versus Asia. But at the very end, she did say, Fee's going to come out. She's going to do what she needs to do. And the voters are hopefully going to, respond in kind. And so they can try and massage the public statements for us so it doesn't seem like there's drama or there's tea, but they know what this game means. I think a lot of people know what this game means. And I'm sure whoever wins and whoever loses, somebody, be it Becky Hammond or Cheryl Reeve, is going to make the MVP case for their player. Becky's going to make it for Asia. Cheryl's going to make it for Fee. And I guarantee that both of them are going to do it because someone's going to ask about it in both post-game press conferences at the end of this matchup. As for the game itself, I am so excited. I'm pumped to be down here. Got down here early this morning and leaving later this evening. One show and one show only. Came down here for a couple of really cool features, honestly. I came down here to write about Chelsea Gray. I came down here to write about Kirsten Bell, came down here to write about Alana Smith, and to write about Studbuds. And the first story that you're probably going to see is the Kirsten Bell piece. That's going to probably run tomorrow on Friday. Basically, KB, man, we've given her a lot of shit on this show, on this broadcast. Shawnee and I both have kind of said before, like, the power of friendship is like not enough to keep players on rosters, right? And I asked Becky Hammond point blank this morning, I said, do you feel vindicated that this player that you've gotten a lot of shit for keeping on the bench for 2 years, more or less, is now here and can give you 15 or 19 points or 10 points off the bench? And she said, we always knew that she could play. It was about getting the mental side right. It was about getting her up to speed on what the game was. We had a really interesting back and forth, Becky and I, about this kind of year 3, year 4 concept where there's so many guards in the W, whether it's Sabrina, Kelsey Plum, Jackie Young, Sophie Cunningham, Kalia Copper. There's so many players that, like, once they hit year 3, year 4 in this league, particularly guards, they really boost their stock and take that leap as players. And it feels like we're getting some of that out of KB in year 3, year 4 here. There's been quite a bit of adversity that has happened with Kirsten Bell behind the scenes. Becky Hammond told me that, she had lost her father earlier this year or late last year. And so that's been something that's kind of been on the surface in the background with her. But, there's never been the come to Jesus conversation. There's never been a discussion about, you have to get your shit right or get gone. It's basically just been a consistent, steady process. And that's what I wanted to examine and write about. And when we are media members and we criticize or critique players, I think the worst thing you can do as a media person is to throw shit from the sidelines and then shy away from telling the story of you potentially being wrong once you actually get into the arena. Right? Like, it would be very whack, in my opinion, if I came down here and I had thrown these arrows at Kirsten Bell for the last 2 years, and now that she's successful, like, I'm not going to write about it because, God forbid, I'm proven wrong. Like, no, our job is to sometimes be wrong. Like, our job is to give takes. Sometimes those takes are right. Sometimes those takes are wrong. Sometimes you want to have more right takes than wrong takes because it lends credibility to you as an analyst and as a reporter. But if someone proves you wrong, right, like the way Haley Jones in Dallas proved me wrong this year, you got to go down and give credit where it's due. So that's what I'm down here doing for Kirsten Bell. I'm also down here talking to Chelsea Gray. Becky told me that, it was a bit of a mindset change for Chelsea first half of the year versus the second half of the year. And I am going to be talking to Chelsea in pregame availability in a few hours to find out exactly what that means. So that is what we have here. This game is going to be so good, man. I mean, Asia versus Fee, you can't want more than that. The offensive rebounding, the off-ball cutting, the flow of the offense in Vegas works so much better now that they put Jewel Lloyd to the bench. They got KB that is operating in the starting 5. Cheyenne Parker-Tyus probably is not going to be in this game, but she is starting to work out with the team now that she's off maternity leave. And that's a huge component to have, especially as we get later into the season here. That backup big is going to be just a gigantic help for them, especially as a player that can average, 8 to 10 points a game even up to 15, that are best years in the WNBA. On the Minnesota Lynx side, I am looking for ball security today. That is a major piece of what
CJ's mic.
has
1, 2,
doomed them,
3.
but the Lynx have been playing worse when they've been turning the ball over. They've dropped some games. They've won games that probably should have been a little closer than they are. And a lot of that is because they've been sloppy with the ball. And that's what Courtney Williams told us. They want to tighten up. These are little small things, small cosmetic tweaks. I asked her, is there a difference between where you were at this point in the year last year and where you are at this point in the year this year, knowing that what you did last season did not result in a title? And her answer was more or less, no, we're going to be fine. What we did last year is what we do this year. You take it day to day. It's coach speaky in nature, but I do agree with them in that you can't get distracted or bogged down in all of this stuff.
Joe's mic. 1, 2, 3. Test. Joe's mic.
Alana against Napheesa Smith is going to be massive, especially on the other side of the ball. Jessica Shepard at 6'4", going up against Asia and Liz. And I will say this for Asia, and this is part of the MVP candidate discussion here, is this idea that Asia's just so good on defense that she really covers up those holes that Napheesa, has. I mean, she is somewhat deficient on the defensive side of the ball, and Asia is just a better rebounder, and is able to clean up the glass, is able to rim protect, and is also able to help out not just guards that might get blown by, but if, Liz ends up getting into trouble against Jessica Shepard or an Alana Smith, Asia is still there. But I have a feeling we're going to see Asia on Fee and Fee on Asia. And that's what you want. You want these types of matchups, man. You want best on best, good on good, iron sharpening iron, and that's what we are going to get tonight. That's why I'm down here. This game, it's going to have everything. 10 out of 10. Set your dial to it. I'm going to be live here on YouTube in the post game. After we do post game pressers, I'll be out here on YouTube giving my thoughts as well, kind of in the same format, same situation. So that is what we have this evening. While I got everybody here, we will chat a little bit about Angel Reese, because we did this video yesterday, Tyler and I, about Angel and the comments that she made. Shortly after that, we didn't do a video later in the evening because I was in transit out here to Vegas. Annie Costaville puts out a story from Front Office Sports, and I think Angel has a point about being taken out of context in that FOS piece. I think saying that you were taken out of context in the Chicago Tribune is kind of bunk, because those were your quotes. But she was legitimately taken out of context in that Front Office Sports article. And I know that this is kind of the weird lightning rod aspect of Angel, right? Is this idea that Angel can say things and people can respond one of two ways. But just because there might not be a full trustworthiness within her and her narrative does not mean that, the media sources are unimpeachable as well. And that's not to throw any cold water on Annie as a reporter. I want to be very clear on that. Annie Costaville is the best reporter in the WNBA right now in terms of gathering sources and knowing her stuff. But being in this for 10 years, I'm literally here. Like, I am credentialed media here. Reporters have sources that give them, certain things, and you don't necessarily get into a place where you carry water for them. But I think it's really interesting that, there were some things that were said in Annie's piece that I disagreed with, particularly that, Rachel Bannum and Haley Van Lith were the two players in particular that Angel was going after when that wasn't actually explicitly stated in the Tribune piece. The Vandersloot thing, there's context to this, but I'm going to try and be as balanced as I can be as a reporter, because I don't want to out my sources with our information. The most I can say without betraying our sources' confidence and trust here, Sloot and Angel, there is background between those two. It's not beef, but there have been disagreements this year in the locker room about certain things between the two of them. And I'm really curious about when that Tribune article's interview occurred, because if it happened around the time when some of those arguments were starting to reach our ears at No Cap Space, it would make a lot of sense that, that's what Angel would do and what she would say, because, you're coming off of this, semi-charged situation where, you and Sluter are disagreeing with each other over something in the locker room. But past that, I also don't think that she was necessarily wrong about Sloot. I mean, the thing with Angel and all of these comments is like, you're right, you just can't say it there, you know? And that's like the hardest thing about this is like, I don't want to excoriate Angel Reese because Angel told the truth. She's right. She's been right. She has been right about a lot of this shit since day one. But I think that this is something you learn when you're a kid. You know, I can say this at 30, but if you were to take me back to my first TV job as a manager, running a staff of 4 at 24 in Eugene, Oregon, I didn't have it. I didn't have all the answers about how to lead. And there are people that I absolutely mismanaged, you know, and as a 23, 24-year-old leader of the newsroom, you know, you're not the news director, you're not the big manager, right? So like people still look at you as like a team captain versus a head coach is the best analogy I can give. And so I guess, you know, maybe this is wrapped up in some of the personal with me, but like I absolutely empathize with where Angel is. And I just think she needs better people in her corner to be like, okay, how can we message this a little bit better? Because obviously what we were told is that, you know, the players were rightly pretty pissed. You know, they got into the locker room and there was a conversation. As to the details of the conversation and what specifically was said, I do not know. That is information we're still looking to get through our reporting and through our sources, but we do know that there was a conversation and that the players, you know, when people walked into the locker room, it was pretty obvious that there was some tension in there. I liked what she said after the game. I think that's the only thing you can say. I think when it comes to Angel and Annie with the reporting, Annie's never been unfair, in my opinion. I think she's been hard on this guy, but I don't think she's ever been wrong. I don't think I've ever questioned her reporting about whether or not it was accurate. I think, as it is with all reporters, right? I mean, Annie could say the same about me, frankly, if she were to go litigate like what my reporting on certain things has been over the course of time. Like, we all have our sources. We all have people that talk to us. And so our perspective of things can sometimes be skewed by those people. And based on what the reporting was last year and, you know, the prior years between her and Angel in particular, it sounded to me as though Angel's out of context quotes were geared more towards that story than the Trib story. But I think she did the right thing by apologizing. I think that's the only thing you can do, frankly, is apologize to your teammates, you know, say you fucked up and move on, because ultimately half to 3/4 of this team's not going to be on the roster next year anyway. You know, you are wiping the slate clean. You don't have picks. You're really trying to convince people to come. The Sky are just not a great organization. And I think that Angel has not maybe handled it in a way that I would. But if also I was 21 years old and had a ton of money, like maybe I do handle it the way that she does. So I think Angel deserves a little bit of grace. I think she was right. I think she did it the wrong way. But you know what? Who among us, right? Like, it is unprecedented, though. And I think maybe we didn't underscore that enough, like the unprecedented nature of a star legitimately saying like, my team is ass, I can't win with these Cats. Like, not since Kobe has that happened, and there has never been a player of this relative age that doesn't have like MVP trophies and titles. I mean, Kobe did this in 2007 when Kobe was well established in the league. I mean, the fact that Angel's coming up and doing this now is pretty remarkable. And I think that what I didn't like about the Front Office Sports article, you know, with regard to Angel was, you know, saying league executives are thinking about how to balance her talent with her conduct. And it's like, dude, this is a league that has people that have, you know, DV charges on their rap sheet. Like, this is a league that kept Raquan Williams in the WNBA for way longer than she needed to, when there's, you know, domestic violence case after domestic violence case that's happening. Like, we've had people that have said crazy shit. We've had people that have done crazier shit. Like, it just, being outspoken does not seem to be conduct detrimental to me, unless you look at this type of problem solving as a distraction to the team. I don't think Angel has done anything up to this point that warrants that type of feeling and mindset. You know, somebody said to me recently over on Blue Sky, like, well, what's the difference between this and Satu Sabali? Because you have the same smoke for Satu. And my thing was like, Satu's already left one organization and had something not so nice to say about that organization, which is fine. It was Dallas, right? I mean, but I think the problem when it comes to that is, you know, if you're saying it about a second organization potentially, or there appears to be some static in the second organization, like then we start having to litigate the patterns a little bit. So that, it's a slight difference. It matters to me. If it doesn't matter to you, that's okay. But I think Angel isn't wrong. We probably should have had this handled internally. But as a media guy, it's content for me. So what the hell am I going to complain about? I got a few minutes left before I wrap here. The state of Connecticut, according to ESPN, is putting a proposal that keeps the Sun in state. It would make them a minority ownership group. But I think what's really interesting here, the valuation is higher than what the WNBA's valuation is. So the WNBA values Connecticut at $250 million. You say that the franchise is worth $250 million when Steve Pagliuca wanted to buy it for $325, and now the valuation that the state of Connecticut is using is actually more than $250. The idea that the state has is potentially moving the games to what used to be the XL Center, is now People's Bank Arena in Hartford. That's the off-campus home for UConn games. They're going through a $145 million renovation right now. It'll hold 16,000 fans when it's done. And here's the craziest thing. The state would build and finance a facility in Hartford that would be leased by the team. This is, to me, extremely unprecedented. We haven't had a situation where a state comes in and is willing to buy the franchise to keep it there. And it is pretty amazing because, there have been state officials in Connecticut that have called out the WNBA for basically trying to steal the team. And I don't think I have ever seen a state go to the mat like this with an offer to buy a team to keep them exactly where they are. And that, I think, is really fascinating. The quote from the Lieutenant Governor, Susan Beisowitz, saying, "I do believe that the best place for the Connecticut Sun is Connecticut because we have this very fierce fan base for women's basketball. We love the Huskies. We love watching the Sun. Many of our UConn players will be part of the Sun or have been a part of the Sun, and we've seen them be great community leaders and role models. They are very interested in working with the Mohegan tribe, which I think is very necessary here. And it just adds a whole nother wrinkle. So now you have a Mark Lasry bid from the Milwaukee Bucks. You have the Steve Pagliuca offer. You have the WNBA's offer. You now have the state of Connecticut's offer, as well as any potential fifth option, which is effectively a mystery box at this point. So I'm really interested to see what happens there. I'm really fascinated to see what happens with the Chicago Sky, but most importantly, fascinated to see what happens in a matchup of MVP candidates tonight here at T-Mobile Arena. Send in your questions. Let me know what you are interested in hearing about this evening. And be sure to subscribe to us on NoCapSpaceWBB.com. You can get access to our chat. You also get access to our paid tier of content that includes post-game notebooks, which is basically all of my sights and sounds. When we're here on Press Row, what we see that you guys can't. If you are somebody that hasn't seen our work before, if you go back to the post-game notebook from the last time I was down here, which was Aces Wings, that's when a lot of the Chris Koklanis, Dejanay Carrington stuff was going on. And it was our reporting that was telling you that Kurt Miller was the one that was sitting on Press Row yelling to call a timeout and, yelling for all of these things for Chris Koklanis to do, which really underscored how much of a mess the organization was at that point. And that was eventually what led to the trade of Nalissa Smith and eventually led to them trading for Lee Uru as well. So our post-game notebooks have a little bit of utility. And, if you want to subscribe and become a ball knower, you definitely can. Head to NoCapSpaceWBB.com. Also, be sure to like, share, subscribe. Find us anywhere you get your podcast. We will be here all evening long, and we'll be back live for the postgame as well. But for now, that's all the time we got here on No Cap Space. Andrew Hobner here live in Las Vegas with so much more coming up very, very soon.